Okay, right. So we are in Shmuel Aleph, chapter 5, I think. Or is it chapter 6 we're on? No, we're on chapter 5. We got to verse 9. A quick summary of where we're up to. The Ark of Hashem, the Aron Brit, was captured by the Plishtim. It was taken to Ashdod. Dagon had a temple there. Dagon was the fish god, or some say the grain god of Canaan. It was also the Dagon was the god of the Plishtim. And they put the Aron Brit in the temple of Dagon. And Dagon didn't fare very well as a result of this, because he had his head chopped off and his hands chopped off. Remember that. I want you to recall what happened to this god Dagon, because we may come back to it. Might not get to it today, but we will be coming back to it, if not today, then next week. And then they realized that having this ark of God, the Philistines realized that if they had this ark of God around, it wasn't going to do them any good, because they started to get an unpleasant condition called hemorrhoids, which we'll suggest a little bit later on, again, maybe not this week, but perhaps next week. Might not quite have been what we consider to be hemorrhoids, but at the moment we're translating them as hemorrhoids. Ashdod people didn't like this, so they said, you know what, I think we'll send this off somewhere else. Let somebody else have a bit of that sorrow. So they sent it to Gat. And that's more or less where we left it last week. They went to Gat, and Gat suffered a similar, although more severe, outbreak of this condition. They suffered from hemorrhoids in their hidden places, which we learned from this word vayisatru, which was in verse, where is it? Vayisatru, where's it gone, that verse? That word, and it was from a hidden area. They got their hemorrhoids in a hidden area, so they were internal hemorrhoids, not external ones in Gat. So it got worse in Gat than it did in Ashdod. So they wanted to get rid of it as well, quite understandably. So what did they do? And this is where we got to at the end of last week. We got to the fact where the Gat people had been smitten with their, there's the word I was looking for, in verse 9, vayisatru, and it's a hint there. The sin is interchangeable with a samech, and therefore you can't see my screen yet, can you? So you don't know what I'm talking about. Right, there we go. Verse 9 over here, vayisatru lahem tchorim. They had this word vayisatru. There's a hint in there because sin and samech are interchangeable. So the word seter, which means hidden, is in that word there, hidden in that word. And so these were internal hemorrhoids, which are worse than external hemorrhoids. So basically, it got worse each time they moved the ark. So now the people of Gat are not interested in having this ark of God around because it's causing them sorrows. So what they do is, verse 10, Leon, off you go.
They then sent the ark of Hashem to Ekron. It happened when the ark of God arrived in Ekron that the people of Ekron cried out, saying, they have transferred to me the ark of the God of Israel to kill me and my people. So they summoned and gathered all the governors of the Philistines and said to them, send away the ark of the God of Israel. Let it return to its place and not kill me and my people. For there was a panic of death in the whole city. The hand of God was very heavy there. The people who did not die were stricken with hemorrhoids, and the cry of the city ascended to heaven.
Okay, so it's got worse still. Let's just recap. The ark went to Ashdod and they got hemorrhoids. They sent it to Gat and they got internal hemorrhoids. They sent it to Ekron and they started to die. They also had hemorrhoids. Verse 12, the people who didn't die got hemorrhoids, but lots of people died. There was a panic of death in the entire city, and the hand of God was very heavy there. Now, let's just have a look at the places it went to. It went to Ashdod. We need a map here. I need to get a map. Hang on, let me get you a map. Where should we go for this map? Let's go to
the page on Stein's house, Johnny, with a map on
there
it.
is. I want to put one on the screen though.
Okay.
Let's put biblical Gat. That will help us, I think. Just give me a sec to find it. Biblical Gat. Here we are. Coordinates. Wikipedia is an amazing thing. Google Maps. There we go. Right. Can you see this map on my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so this is biblical Gat, the city of Gat. Over here, you can see Ashdod. Ekron is not on this map because this is a modern map, but you'll have to take my word for it that it is here, just very close to Gat. Let's see if I can find another map with Ekron on it. So you
see that? Can you see that, Johnny, or not?
It's a bit far away.
Okay. Sorry.
Let's see if I can find a map. Here we go. Let's have a look. Ekron. I looked all this up last night to find out where the exact places were. Right, here's Ekron. Oh, that doesn't really help us, does it? Okay, anyway, let's go back to this one because this is a good map here. This is Gat, and Ekron is just over here. It's very close by. I can't remember whether it's slightly north or slightly south, but it's slightly to the west. I think it might be slightly northwest. The point that I want to make is that the ark went to three places. It went to Ashdod, and then it went to Gat, which is over here where the red blob is, and then it went to Ekron. There were 5 major cities of the Philistines, and they were Gaza over here down the south, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Gat, and Ekron. They were the 5 cities. So it goes to Ashdod first, then it goes to Gat, and then it goes to Ekron. And we already spoke about this last week, and we saw it in yesterday's parsha, that there is an idea that people who, an idea that if you move places, you have a different approach to things. So Meshaneh Makom, Meshaneh Mazal is an expression we see in Chazal. If you change place, you change your name. It's often why people used to move cities from place to place to change their mazel. And in yesterday's Sedra, Balak takes Bilam to 3 different places to try and curse the Jews. The first one doesn't work, so he says, well, let's go somewhere else. Maybe it'll work a second time. That doesn't work, so he says, okay, well, let's try again for a 3rd time. Takes him to a different place to try and curse. So it's the same idea here. The ark goes to Ashdod, and bad things happen. It goes to Gat, and worse things happen. And then it goes to Ekron, and worse things still happen. But you can see it's all in the same geographical area. Now, we know from our famous tribal map, don't we, that the Pelishti area was Philistine area was over here. Dan was over here, which is why he went up north. This is in the northern part of the Philistine area. The question that was asked by my Chevruta on Friday when we were learning this is, why didn't they take the ark down into the Philistine stronghold, which would be Gaza? Why is Gaza the strongest of the stronghold? Well, because it's furthest away from the other warring parts, which is all the Bnei Israel. The Bnei Israel, if I just have a look at our territories map again, let me just show that to you. Let's stop that share and try a different share as well. Hang on a second, share screen. Here we go. We go back to our famous map that you're all very familiar with. Here are the Philistines. It's not got Ekron and Gat on this map, but it's got the other three, Gaza, Ashkelon, and Ashdod. Gat is over here, and Ekron is in the same similar area. So the question that was asked by my Chevruta is, why didn't they take it down to Gaza? You'd expect them to take it into the stronghold, away from the Bnei Israel. The Bnei Israel are up here. Shiloh, of course, which is where it came from, is over here. So why did they send it to cities in the north? Anybody want to suggest an answer as to why they didn't take it into Gaza? Any
They just
ideas?
didn't want it there. They'd seen what happened already in the other places.
Well, I think that's probably right, Michael. I think that they wanted to have it close by where they could get rid of it as quickly as possible, because they could see a pattern emerging here. So Ashdod to Gat, we understand. Gat to Ekron, they're close by. And then when it comes to Ekron, altogether, they are going to get rid of it altogether from Ekron, as you'll see right now. So let's go back to the Psukim. They sent the ark away of God to Ekron, and then it got worse. They started dying. Now, they started dying and they got hemorrhoids, and the cry of the city ascended to heaven. Now, there is I don't want to spend too much time on this because it's an important fact to see that there are parallels here with what went on in Egypt. And there are various linguistic clues to send us back to Mitzrayim and the idea of the plagues. So, for example, I'm not going to go through them all because there's loads of them, but for example, you see that here, verse 9, read verse 9 for us.
It was after they transferred it that the hand of Hashem was set against the city, causing a great commotion. He struck the people of the city from small to great, and he afflicted them internally with hemorrhoids. Okay, so in this pasuk, we see an expression, Yad Hashem, the hand of God. In Egypt, in the plagues, we see the plagues described by the magicians of Egypt as Etzba Elokim, the finger of God, and later on we see them describe it as the hand of God. This word here, Vayach, and he struck. We see that word twice within the plagues. Where do we see that? Anybody remember where we see that word Vayach, and he struck? Anyone remember that word? David? Yes, Moshe struck the ground using that word Vayach, struck the ground when the lice came about. Now that's going to be very important, that the word Vayach, which we see here, and he struck,
takes us back to the plague of lice. So again, I want you to park that for a moment as well. So there's two things we've got parked. I bet you've forgotten the first one already, haven't you? The first one I asked you to park was the fact that Dagon had his hands and his head chopped off. And the second thing I want you to park is that this word vayach in verse 9 takes us back to the plague of lice. So there's lots of other connections between the plagues of Israel, of Egypt, and the plagues here. And here you have another one, just a quick one here. The people say that they sent and gathered all the lords of the Philistines, and they said, send away the ark of God of Israel. What's this word? Shalchu et Aaron. What does that remind you of? Shalchu. What does Moshe say to Pharaoh? Shalach et ami. Send my people out. Badly translated usually as let my people go, which is not what it says at all. Shalach et ami veyavduni. Send out my people that they may serve me, using this word shalach. The word shalach, the root shin lamed chet, is used, I think, 20 times in the parasha of the plagues. This expression here, send away the ark, is another hint towards the connection between Mitzrayim and the situation here with the Plishtim. So
he also sent the spies. Didn't say shalach. I can't remember the word for it.
Shlach lecha, yeah. Shlach lecha, send the spies. That's right. And we know what happened with them. That was another disaster. Lots of connections with Egypt and the Philistines here. So we're here at the stage where this thing has got worse and worse, and that's again a parallel to Egypt. The plagues got worse and worse and worse until what happened? The final plague of the firstborn, and out they went. So here we've got hemorrhoids in Ashdod, internal hemorrhoids in Gat, and death, lots of it, and panic in Ekron. And then what do? They don't send the people out, they send the ark away. And they say, let it return it to its place. Now, where is its place? Where are they going to return it to? Where is the place of the ark? Where should it be?
Shiloh.
It should be in Shiloh, correct, because that's where it came from, if you remember. There were two rival Mishkanim, one in Shiloh and one in Bethel. This ark at the time was in Shiloh. We know that because it tells us it in the story earlier on. They sent to Shiloh to get the ark. They brought the ark, and of course we had this whole discussion that they brought the wrong ark, according to some. But either way, it came from Shiloh. So let it return to its place. So you'd expect them to be sending it off to Shiloh, wouldn't you? Yes. Well, you can tell by the question that I'm asking you that when you read the next chapter, which is what we're going to do now, we find that it doesn't go to Shiloh. Now, why might that be? Why does it not go to Shiloh? Any offers? Why did it not go to Shiloh?
They want to get rid of it as quickly as possible to the closest place.
Okay. I'll buy that initially, Michael, but then you'll see when we read the first pasuk of verse 6 that actually that's not the case. But I'll buy that as a good logical answer. Any others?
They didn't want to face the Israelis again, the Jews. More fighting.
I think that could well be the case. That they were frightened that the ark has already caused them all that much trouble. They don't want any more trouble. There is a more obvious answer, that the Mefarshim, and I think the Radak is one that says that actually they had destroyed Shiloh. Remember, they have battled Israel. Israel had come to battle the Plishtim from Even Ezer, but they were completely routed, having lost 34,000 men. And the Mefarshim suggest that included in that routing was a destruction of Shiloh. And I think they use this idea. It's a bit sort of chicken and egg in a way, because they use this idea that the ark did not go back to Shiloh as part of their idea that Shiloh was destroyed in the battle, and therefore it couldn't go back to Shiloh. So let's have a look and see what actually happened to the ark. And we go into the next chapter, chapter 6 of Shmuel Aleph. And this is where your theory, Michael, is blown out of the water. They didn't want to get it. Well, they may have wanted to get rid of it straight away as soon as possible, but they didn't. Verse 1.
The ark of Hashem had been in the land of the Philistines for 7 months.
Let's stop there for a second. If, as Michael's very logical suggestion was correct, that they wanted to get rid of it straight away, why are they hanging about with it in their own fields for 7 months? Why was it there? I mean, Michael's suggestion is completely correct. If you had this thing that was causing death and hemorrhoids all over the place, wherever it went, you would want to get rid of it as quickly as possible. For some reason, it hangs around for 7 months. And
yeah, but surely it doesn't hang around for 7 months. Surely that 7 months includes the first 3 cases where the hemorrhoids, internal hemorrhoids and death. So therefore that might have taken 7 months.
No, I don't think so, because it says in the fields of the Philistines. The other ones were in cities. They were in the cities. So I think this is from Ekron. They dumped it, I think, unceremoniously out in the open fields, where theoretically it couldn't kill anyone or give them hemorrhoids because there aren't anyone there. It's in the open fields. But it stays there for 7 months. Why do you think that might be?
I don't know if it's right. They had hemorrhoids, they couldn't lift it.
Could be, possibly.
Seriously.
They had to be cured from their illness, could be. I think verse 2 gives us a clue. Verse 2, Leon.
The Philistines called upon the priests and the sorcerers, saying, "What shall we do about the ark of Hashem? Inform us how we should send it back to its place."
So what they do, the people send to the priests and the diviners, they're the leaders, I suppose. They're the machers, and they say, what shall we do with it? So it's there for 7 months because they can't agree on what to do with it. Nobody knows how to send it back, what to send it back with, and we'll see shortly that there are suggestions as to how to send it back and what they hadn't worked out what to do with it, how to send it back. They can't just DHL it. I don't think DHL would have taken it at that time. So they've got to know how they're going to get it there, and where they're going to send it to, and how, and what with. So this is not a decision that can just be made chick-chack. They had to go to the Knesset, and then they had to have 5 lots of elections, and before they could work out who was going to decide what to do with this thing. So they don't know what to do with it. So the people ask the machers, what shall we do? And look at the answer. The answer is very interesting.
They replied, "If you are sending back the ark of the God of Israel, you must not send it back empty-handed, but you must certainly send back a guilt offering to him. Then you will be healed, and you will realize why his hand would not turn away from against you." Right.
So the first thing I want to point out there is that I think that supports Johnny Halpin's opinion, because the leaders are saying that only if you send back a guilt offering with this will you be cured. Ergo, you're not cured yet. So they were still suffering from their problems. So it could well be that they weren't yet fit to deal with it. So that could be the case, Johnny. You could be a support there for your theory. But I want to point out to you the second word in the pasuk, Vayomru, and they said, Im meshalachim et Aaron. Accurately translated here and by Leon, if you send the ark of God of Israel. So what does that mean, if you send the ark of God? They're asking them, how should we send this back? Why don't they say, when you send the ark of the God of Israel, do not send it away empty-handed? Why if? Any offers? Why if and not when?
Maybe they would. Maybe they could have destroyed the Ark of the Covenant rather than sending it back.
Well, I think they'd be scared of that, wouldn't they? They've already found out what power it's got. I don't think they'd want to start with it. I think they want to just get rid of it out of their backyard. I think this word "if."
I think it means if you made up your mind already to send it back.
Right. In other words, they're not sure whether this is the right thing to do or not at this point. Okay. And yeah. I think that is a support for the explanation that we gave for verse 1, why it was in there for 7 months, because they haven't made up their mind what to do with it. Even at verse 3, after 7 months, the leaders are saying, well, if you send the ark back, don't send it back empty-handed. Implication, I'm not sure yet whether you should be sending it back or not. It's only an if at this point. So if you send the ark back, don't send it back empty-handed. You need to send it back with something. Now, this is very consistent with the methodology of the time of how to treat gods with a small g, because what you did was you placated the gods. If your god was giving you a hard time, so for example, if the storm god was having a bit of a paddy and decided to throw a whole load of terrible storms at you, you would quickly go to the temple of the storm god and bring korbanot, bring offerings, and do all sorts of things to placate the storm god. It would be the same for the rain god. If the rain god decided that he wasn't giving you any rain, you would go to the rain god and do all sorts of tefillot and korbanot and all sorts of things to placate the gods, so that they would treat you more nicely. So this is the same idea here. What the Plishtim are saying is, you're going to send this ark back. You need to let the ark know. You need to let the God of the ark know, because this is the ark of the God of Israel, that we're sorry for everything that we did. It's a guilt offering. We're sorry. And please stop being nasty to us. Please stop sending us hemorrhoids, and please stop killing us. So they're saying that if you're going to send it back, you need to send back something with it to placate the anger of the ark of the God of Israel, so that you don't get the punishments that it's handing out. So the next question, if we've sorted that out now, the people said, okay, I understand where you're coming from. We need to send something back with the ark. And so the next question, the next obvious question is verse 4, Leon.
So they said, what is the guilt offering that we should send back to him? They answered, according to the number of Philistine governors, 5 golden images of hemorrhoids and 5 golden mice, for the same plague is upon all of you and upon your governors.
Okay, let's stop there. There's a lot to talk about in this pasuk here. So they are suggesting that the offering should be what should be sent. What they should be sent with the ark should be golden images of hemorrhoids. I've waited for a long time to say this. This gives a whole new meaning to the expression piles of gold. I've wanted to say that for a long time. Okay, so they are sending hemorrhoids made out of gold. Why? Obviously, because that's what they had, and they are alluding to that. But why mice? Why gold mice? I understand why they're sending piles of gold, but why are they sending golden mice? What's that got to do with the price of cheese here? It says here, read the verse again for us, Leon, please. Verse 5. No, no, we haven't done verse 5 yet. Do 4 and 5 together.
So they said, what is the guilt offering that we should send back to him? They answered, according to the number of Philistine governors, 5 golden images of hemorrhoids and 5 golden mice. For the same plague is upon all of you and upon your governors. Make your images of hemorrhoids and your images of mice, which are demolishing the country, and give them as homage to the God of Israel. Perhaps he will alleviate his hand from upon you and your gods and your land.
Okay, so now we've learned something new here that we didn't know before. Up until now, what have we heard that has happened to the inhabitants of Philistia? We know that they have had hemorrhoids, external hemorrhoids in Ashdod, internal hemorrhoids in Gat, and hemorrhoids and death in Ekron. We now learn something else, which we weren't told before. Verse 5 says, you shall make the images of your hemorrhoids and the images of your mice who destroy the land. We now see that there was another bad thing going on here. It wasn't just a physical affliction of hemorrhoids. There were mice. There was a plague, note that word, a plague of mice, which was destroying the land. What does that remind you of?
Egypt.
Egypt, again, Egypt, where we had the locusts destroyed all the crops. The hail destroyed all the crops. Here it's mice that are destroying the land. And this is something new, which we're now learning for the first time, that what was going on here was a twofold situation. You've got some kind of hemorrhoid thing, and you've got mice which are destroying the land, loads of them. And they're suggesting that in order to try and alleviate this, which they should send golden hemorrhoids and golden mice together with the Aron HaKodesh when Aaron HaBrit, when it goes back to the Bnei Yisrael as a guilt offering to the God of Israel. Now, what can we learn from this idea that we've just brought into the picture of mice? Any suggestions before I let David Marks loose on you to explain what's going on here? Any suggestions what the mice bring to the party here? All right, David, I promised you at the end of last week's shiur that you could tell us about this.
Well, no, this was, I think, suggested by the Radak that this was a form of bubonic plague.
Yeah.
That affected both the fields and affected the people internally. But I've just had another thought now that, of course, the god that's being attacked here, Dagon, he's the god both of fertility and the god of grain. So right. striking them in their ears, it's affecting their fertility, and it's also striking the land. So the two symbols of the god.
Right. Okay. Let's take both of those ideas one at a time. Let's first of all go to the idea that this was bubonic plague. Who knows anything about bubonic plague?
It's spread by rats.
Okay, it's spread by, actually, it's spread by the fleas on rats, but you're right. It was spread by rats. Let me show you a nice picture here. Who knows what this is? Hang on. Let me show you this. Who knows what this is? Anybody know what that is?
Looks like the Venice Film Festival.
I don't know if it is, but it is a mock-up of a uniform, not a uniform, a uniform that was worn by doctors at the time of the Great Bubonic Plague in the 16th century. That was what the doctors wore. This was this picture here became the recognized international symbol of bubonic plague. And in this huge beak, first of all, it was black because it was a black death. There was lots of death around, so it's all black. In this huge beak, the doctors would place dried flowers and like we would call potpourri today, for two reasons. One, because they thought that it would ward off the illness of bubonic plague when they were going around treating the patients, but probably more for the second reason, that it masked the horrible smell and stench of death. So this became the symbol of the Black Death. Now, as Paul correctly pointed out, bubonic plague was spread by rats or small vermin. And here's another picture just to confirm that. There is an old picture of the doctor's uniform in the Black Death, and superimposed next to it is one of the carriers. It was actually carried in fleas that were on the rats. So bubonic plague was, it's a suggestion by the Radak that what was going on at this time was bubonic plague. Now, I did a little bit of research on bubonic plague, and I now want to bring back to you the two things that I asked you to park. The second thing I asked you to park, if you remember, was vayach, that they were smitten with this plague. And I asked you to remember that the word vayach, which David told us, is used when Moshe strikes the ground and they get lice. Lice live in animals. It was a type of flea, actually, not lice, but it was a type of flea that carried the bubonic plague on the rats in the Black Death. So you've got a little bit of a connection there. And the other thing that I wanted to that I wanted to share, that I wanted you to park, was the fact that Dagon lost his head and his hands in this whole episode in Ashdod. Do you remember that? Now, let me share this screen with you. This is not for the squeamish, so if you're squeamish now, please look away. There is a picture of somebody in 2017 who caught bubonic plague. And one of the things that happens with bubonic plague is that you get gangrene of your hands. And as you can see from this fellow, Nebuch, he lost his hands. His hands became gangrenous and fell off. Very similar to what happened to Dagon. So we've got another connection there, potential connection with the bubonic plague. Now, let's get rid of that horrible picture. You don't want to see that anymore. What else is connected with the bubonic plague is the other thing that you get with bubonic plague are swellings. Your lymph glands become very, very swollen. They can be swollen to the size of lemons. Let me show you another picture. It's not quite so squeamish, this one. This is also bubonic plague. Swellings. There, can you see those are lymph nodes? Those are swellings that you get in bubonic plague. Now, is it possible, I suggest to you, that the techorim, these swellings, which have been translated as hemorrhoids, were not hemorrhoids at all, but were actually swollen lymph nodes in the area of the hidden parts? You can see that's right up in the groin. There are lymph glands. There's a whole chain of lymph glands in the groin, even closer to the private parts than that. I would like to suggest to you that this whole idea that the Radak brings, that this was bubonic plague, is extremely feasible from the psukim themselves. That we know that Dagon lost his hands. That was symbolic of what might happen to people with bubonic plague. They got swellings described as hemorrhoids, but I'm suggesting to you that these might have been swollen lymph glands and not what we would call hemorrhoids. And we know that there was a plague of mice, which could easily have spread this disease. We know that that was the case from our pasuk that we've just said. And we also know from the previous pasuk that as things went on, it got worse. They started off with swellings. They then got more swellings in a worse place. And then finally in Ekron, they died. And that is the development of the disease. So I think that the concept that this might have been bubonic plague is entirely feasible and entirely explainable using the wonderful media of the internet and Wikipedia and wiki images. So I hope that that's giving you some food for thought there. That we
Rabbi Steinsaltz, Johnny, Rabbi Steinsaltz gives 2 columns of the detailed medical conditions of hemorrhoids. So
right.
He's quite sure it's the actual hemorrhoids, well, as we know it.
We don't need to go into the details of hemorrhoids.
No, I'm saying he's sure that they are hemorrhoids.
Yeah. I mean, I just found the Radak's suggestion very feasible when I read these psukim about the mice and about the fact that they were sending golden mice. These mice must have been very, very important in this whole play, because there's only 2 things that they're sending. They're sending piles of gold, and they're sending mice made out of gold. And it just struck me when I read a bit more about bubonic plague that there's a lot of potential connections there, and perhaps that's why the Radak suggests that to us. So now let's move on. Yes, Johnny, David. Oh, it was the second part. What was the second thing that you said? Oh, Dagon, that's right. So Dagon was indeed the Canaanite god of grain. From we use that same modern Hebrew word. Dagon is grain in modern Hebrew. So the mice, this plague of mice, which destroyed the land, is destroyed the crops. That's another direct attack on the god Dagon. That won't have gone unnoticed by the people of Plishti. Yes, David.
Yeah, can I support your theory with the pasuk from the Tochacha in Devarim Chaf Chet Pasuk Chaf Vav. Sorry,
Say that again.
Chaf Vav. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 27.
Okay, let's just get it up on the screen. Chapter 28. That's verse 27. So that's in the Parsha of Kitavo. Okay, there we go. Would you like to read that for us, Leon?
Hashem will strike you with the boils of Egypt, with hemorrhoids, with wet boils and dry boils, of which you cannot be cured.
And let's have a look at the Hebrew.
Can we see that, Johnny? Can we see that?
Oh, sorry, yes, thank you. I'll share that with you. Sorry, there we go. Here it is, over here. Yakacha Hashem bishchin Mitzrayim, the boils of Egypt, uvatechorim. And again, we've got the Kriyat Ketiv, the same words, the Kriyat Ketiv, it's written one way and read another way, exactly the same as in our chapter. So these are the hemorrhoids, and then it goes to be a little bit more specific. Uvagarav uvacheres, horrible, nasty things, oozing sores and dry lesions, asher lo tuchal lahirafe, from which you cannot be cured. There is no, or there was no cure for the bubonic plague. Thank you, David. Do you want to expand on that, or?
I think it says it all, and again, it ties in the plagues on the Plishtim with the plagues on the Mitzrim, the same language, the same ideas.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for that.
Can I just add one other thing here, tying into the 7 months that I've seen here, that there's a midrash that's brought that this was a punishment for Avraham Avinu making a Brit with Avimelech Melech Pelishtim, and the Brit that he made with them with him was by bringing Sheva Kavasot, and for that 7 the presence of the 7 lambs, we were punished midah keneged midah by having the ark captured for 7 months.
That's interesting. And what was the Brit? Let's see if we can expand on that ourselves. So
it's the Kriyat HaTorah, I think, on the first day of Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah.
In
what was the Brit that it made? It would be in Parashat Vayera, no doubt.
Yeah.
Let's have a look and see if we can find it. What was the covenant all about that Avraham made with?
Is it in the Akedah?
No, it's first day.
Before the Akedah.
Before the Akedah.
The first day, Rosh Hashanah.
Right, let's have a look. Let's see if we can find it.
It's chapter 21, Pasuk 28.
Well, I'm almost there. There we go. Next page. There we go. All right. Now let's see what it's about. What was this about? So let's go from, I don't know if you've got it, Leon, chapter 21 in Bereshit. And it starts at verse 22, actually, the story. Let's just get it up on the screen. Bereshit, chapter 21. verse 22. Okay, it's on the screen for you now. Can you see it over here? Now it came to pass. Yeah, okay, off you go, Leon.
At that time, Avimelech and Phicol, his general, said to Abraham, God is with you in all that you do. Now swear to me here by God that you will not deal falsely with me, nor with my son, nor with my grandson. According to the kindness that I have done with you, do with me, and with the land in which you have sojourned. And Abraham said, I will swear.
Go on, keep going.
Then Abraham disputed with Avimelech regarding the well of water that Avimelech's servants had seized. But Avimelech said, I do not know who did this thing. Furthermore, you have never told me. And moreover, I myself have heard nothing of it except for today. So Abraham took flocks and cattle and gave them to Avimelech, and the two of them entered into a covenant. Abraham set 7 ewes of the flock by themselves. And Avimelech said to Abraham, what are these 7 ewes which you have set by themselves? And he replied, because you are to take these 7 ewes from me, that it may serve me as testimony that I dug this well. Therefore that place was called Beersheba, because the two of them took an oath. Thus they entered into a covenant at Beersheba. Avimelech then arose with Phicol his general, and they returned to the land of the Philistines.
Okay, so David, help me out here.
No, you need to carry on.
Okay, carry on, because so far I can't see he's done anything wrong.
Can I see it? Can you move up the screen, Johnny?
Yes.
Please.
Go ahead.
He planted an eshel in Beersheba, and there he proclaimed the name of Hashem, God of the universe. And Abraham sojourned in the land of the Philistines many years.
Yeah.
And it happened.
Yeah, you've got to carry on.
And it happened after these things that God tested Abraham.
We missed, I think, Pasuk 27 with the 7 kavasot.
Yeah, we read that out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's stay again. Abraham took flocks and cattle and gave them to Avimelech, and they both formed a covenant.
Yeah. So again, this midrash is suggesting, and there's probably a political reason behind it, that we should never have made a covenant with the Plishtim, and as a result of this covenant, we were later on punished, and the Plishtim got their punishment in return. Our punishment was having the ark taken away from us for the 7-month period. And this is a statement about not giving up any land to the 7 Canaanite nations.
Interesting. Okay, that's interesting. Well, first of all, the Plishtim aren't one of the 7 Canaanite nations that are listed, but they certainly were a thorn in our sides at that time. So that's an interesting midrash, isn't it? Because I'm reading this. I don't know about anybody else. I can't actually see anything wrong with what Abraham's done here. He's living in and remember, he's a stranger here in a strange land. He doesn't own this land at the time. And they have a to-do about a well of water, and they make a deal. And they seal a covenant. We don't see, do we? I don't know. Do we see any criticism of Yitzchak when he makes various covenants over things? I don't know.
So, as I said, this may be a very political statement made by the midrash at the time.
Yeah, very interesting. I think it needs. I can see that connection of 7 and 7, but actually, I can't really see much else connection personally. But it's interesting, that midrash, and I think you're right, David. We need to have to put that midrash in the context of when the midrash was written, of course, which we don't know. But the idea that Abraham is, as it were, being criticized or punished for doing a deal with the locals it appears from that midrash to be frowned upon. Okay, I think that's a bit tough, but there you go.
Can I just say maybe it's because doesn't it mention that he brought the name of Hashem into this covenant that he made? And maybe that's why.
You mean he shouldn't have been using Hashem's name
In a covenant with a
a Philistine?
Yeah.
That's an interesting thought. Could be, I suppose. Yeah. Could be. He swears. That's right. Anochi ishavea. I will swear. And he says, "Swear to me here by God." And he swears. Vivian, that could be right. Yes. Yes, I think that could well be the reason why he's criticized. Excellent. Thank you for that, Vivian. We know that we're not meant to swear by the name of God, even if it's true at all, because I mean that's of course the origin of when you go to court. If you're offered to affirm, you should try and affirm rather than swear, so that you are not coming against that. Right, that's excellent, really good. Okay, let's finish off by going back to Shmuel. And just see if this is a good place to stop. We did verse 6, I think, didn't we? But let's do it again.
No, I don't think so.
No.
Why should you harden your hearts as Egypt and Pharaoh hardened their hearts? Did it not happen that when he mocked them, they had to send the Israelites forth and they left?
So here, we don't even need to work very hard to see the connection between Egypt and the Philistine. The Navi is telling us it directly. These are the people of Philistine saying to their leaders, why are you prevaricating here? Send the thing away. Do you not remember what happened to Pharaoh when he was stubborn and didn't send the people? He brought disaster upon his nation. And this is what you're doing. You're not learning your lesson. This is the people of the Philistines saying to the leaders, you're not learning your lesson. And the same thing happened in Egypt, if you remember. The people went and said, do you not know that Egypt is lost already? Send them out already. That was at the plague of locusts, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was the plague of locusts. Am I right, David?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. By that time, they'd had enough. The people had had enough, and it was only Pharaoh who was being stubborn. Here, it's the same thing. The people of Philistia have had enough. They want to get rid of these things, and they're saying and this is a response, by the way. Verse 6 is a response to verse 3. If you send the ark of God, this is what we said earlier, that the leaders are saying, well, I'm not so sure you should be sending it. It's only an if at this stage. And then the people say, no, it's not an if, it's a how. We've made up our minds. It's going. We're not going to be stubborn like you and like Pharaoh. It's going. All we want you to tell us is how to do it. You've told us how to do it now, and let's get on with it. You've told us to make these hemorrhoids of gold, to make these mice of gold. That's what we're going to do. And what we'll do next week is how the actual ark made its way from Philistia to a place which was not Shiloh. And we will do that next week, please God. Any questions on what we've done today? Let's just do a quick summary before that. So what we did was we saw that the plague has got worse in each place. They stick it in a field for 7 months because they don't know what to do with it, and they want it out of the way. We spoke about this idea of the mice being potentially part of this bubonic plague idea, and the leaders not being sure they should send it back, the people being very sure they should send it back, and sending it back not being empty-handed, but with golden hemorrhoids and golden mice. We spoke about the bubonic plague, that you can lose your hands with bubonic plague due to gangrene, and that's what happened to Dagon. And the swellings in the groin area may well be these techorim, which are being referred to in the psukim. And now we can see, we complete the circle here, as it were, that the situation in Philistia and the situation in Egypt were parallel situations. Next week, we'll go on further and see how the ark moves forward. Any questions so far?
Rabbi Steinfeld says the mice don't harm people. They were actually voles, which eating all the crops, not just eating the crops. They could actually hoard them and cause a famine in the land, which you could connect that with Egypt as well, I suppose.
Yes, indeed. We would need to explain how the deaths occurred there. We will not had any explanation if they were voles, unless unless the suggestion is they died from their hemorrhoids.
But they starve if there's no food.
Oh, okay, yeah, all right, yeah, that's true.
Is there any difference between the fact that they talk about mice instead of rats when you talk about bubonic plague?
No, I think the bubonic plague in the 16th century was actually transmitted in rats, but they were basically fleas that can go on any small mammal. Any other comments after that gruesome picture show that I showed you? It's a good job it's a fast day, because I probably ruined your breakfast with all those pictures. Those of you who are fasting, I hope you have an easy fast. Those of you who want to come to shul tonight, mincha is at 7:15. Tonight, I'll just stop recording because we don't need to record this nonsense.